I was still in house shoes, broom in hand, when the HOA notice snapped against my gate hard enough to turn heads on our cul-de-sac. Bright, orange, bold fines, my name printed smaller than the number that wanted it. Across the street, Patricia Keene tilted her sunglasses phone already up like she couldn't wait to collect my embarrassment. That's when I knew this wasn't about windows or bylaws, it was about making me small. I was sweeping grit off my driveway when the fluorescent orange notice slapped against the gate. It flapped once like it had an opinion about me, then stuck fast to the latch. "Please tell me you're just some coupon," I said to the paper. I peeled it free. "Notice of violation," screamed across the top. "Window installation non-compliant. Verify against permit PB 20411. Anderson, AW 400 series," it read. My name sat on the bottom line like an afterthought smaller than the fine. Across the cul-de-sac, Patricia Keene raised her sunglasses with 2 fingers. Slow, appraising. Her phone came up face-lit. I couldn't see if it was a camera or a mirror, only the decision already made in her posture. "Morning, Patricia." I called, keeping the broom in my hand like a neutral flag. "Good morning, Caleb," she replied, walking over with that HOA cadence you could bounce a quarter off. "We're just keeping everyone aligned with community standards." "Whose standards?" I asked. "The bylaws," she said. "You've read them." "I've slept to them," I said. "Reading implies enjoyment." She smiled politely at the notice in my hand. "It's nothing personal. It has my name on it," I said, "and a permit number I don't give out." "City records are public," she said, moving a half-step nearer to the gate as if the metal could pick a side. "You know how it is." "I know how it was when I worked," I said. "Records were public, but people had manners." She looked past me over my shoulder. "Please address this within 30 days. We prefer voluntary compliance, and if I prefer understanding," I asked. "We'll schedule a hearing," she said. "If it gets that far." Her sunglasses lowered, the conversation ended by hydraulics. Cicadas screamed the way they do when summer has no patience. Somewhere down the street, tires crushed gravel in SUV, nosing past at 3 miles per hour just slow enough to memorize. I took my phone from my pocket and snapped the notice while it still clung to the gate. The paper wrinkled where sweat rolled off my wrist. My reflection bent in the latch. Gray hair, older eyes, a man trying not to take a piece of paper personally. "Need a hand." "Caleb?" My next-door neighbor, Frank, called without stopping. He was already halfway into his garage, hands full of pool noodles he didn't need in June. "I'm fine," I said. "Good, good," he answered, voice echoing off the lawnmower. "Property values, you know." "Do I?" said. But he had vanished into the hum of the door. I set the notice on the porch rail to dry, then tapped record on my phone. June. Austin. Early heat. HOA notice posted on gate. Permit PB 20411. AW 400 series cited. I panned to the gate, the street the angle from Patricia's house. Old habit's audit voice settled in my throat like it had never left. Patricia's footsteps returned before I finished. "Oh, one more thing," she said lightly. "Please refrain from photographing board members without consent." "I was photographing my gate," I said. "My gate consents." "We appreciate cooperation," she replied, and the word appreciate landed exactly between compliment and threat. Inside, the AC coughed itself awake. I set the notice on the kitchen table where a binder sat fat with warranties and appliance manuals home lettered in my wife's handwriting from years I still measured in seasons. I slid a new tab into the rings HOA. The click sounded like a decision you don't cheer for, but make anyway. My phone buzzed. A community email rolled across the screen. Subject friendly reminder standards. Keep us safe. Body uniform. Aesthetic preserves property value for all. Immediate resolution preferred. No signature, just board. The phrases wore shine marks like they'd been used on other people first. I highlighted the permit number on the notice with the last working pen in the house. PB 20411, I read. Anderson, AW 400. I'd switched those windows during the divorce when silence needed tasks. The city inspector had signed off. I remembered the morning a man with a clipboard, the smell of cut vinyl, the way the new latches clicked with a confidence I tried to borrow. City records are public, I repeated out loud to no one, and shoe sizes if you ask the right gossip. I drew a box around the model code, then another box. I wasn't angry yet, only cataloging. Anger always muddies ink. The doorbell dinged a single note of obligation. Patricia stood there again holding a copy of the same notice. We like to leave a spare, she said. In case I frame one, I said. In case. The first blows away, she said. June storms. What if they blow away your assumptions, I asked. Caleb, she said. Lowered voice. We all want the same thing. I doubt that, I said gently. I want quiet. Quiet comes from order, she said, handing me the second notice, palm open like a donation plate. Have a good day. When the door shut, I felt the old weight in my shoulder case's boxes, numbers that argued back. I breathed until the exhale stopped shivering, then set the second notice beneath the first like a duplicate aimed to be proof. At the sink, I rinsed the broom bristles, knocked sand from the handle, and caught a reflection in the window glass, a dark shape 2 houses down, idling. The same SUV. Slow, like thinking. I stepped outside again with the binder under my arm. Heat hit my chest, flat iron hot. The cicadas had graduated from hum to chant. I took another photo of the gate latch this time with my finger pointing so later I'd know where the tape residue had been. Documentation never assumes you'll remember. Documentation knows you won't. Across the street, Patricia talked to someone I couldn't see. She laughed, a small private laugh. When she turned, her face was back to neutral. HOA, neutral, the color of carpet in conference rooms where decisions are made and later called community. Caleb, she called, do you have any questions? Just one, I said. How did you get the model code? It's in the permit, she said brightly. Permits list the manufacturer, not the exact series, I said, unless you ask. Then ask the city, she said, smile tucked in place. They're very helpful. Are you? I asked. She didn't answer, which was its own answer. The SUV rolled on a slow tire over a scattered line of pebbles, the sound a warning gives when it still thinks it's subtle. Back in the kitchen, I opened the binder and wrote the day's date on a blank sheet. Sequence I wrote on the top line. 1. Notice posted. 2. Duplicate delivered. 3. Email blast. 4. SUV slow roll. 5. Board member states, nothing personal. I added, everything personal, then crossed it out. The motion belongs in a different folder. The microclimax presented itself without fanfare. Halfway down the notice, beneath the fines and the deadline, there was a line item, verify fenestration against current city code, FAR 18 to 142 CE. The code citation was 2 years younger than my windows. City code changed after installation, I said, pressing the pen into the paper. You don't backdate the future. I rotated the notice and snapped another photo framing the line so close the ink bled at the edges of the screen. Someone had searched for terms they didn't fully understand, then stapled the result to my day. My phone reflected the kitchen light and my face in equal guilt. I opened messages and typed to my son. Me. Where would an HOA even get this data? The 3 dots arrived like a lifeguard running visible, promising, then gone. The screen returned to flat, unhelpful glass. The cicadas droned. Outside, a single leaf skittered across the driveway, drawing a chalky trail through the broom lines I had tried to make straight. I set the phone on the table next to the notice, next to the binder. Then I pulled the chair in and sat with the posture they taught us at work when you're about to find something and you wish you weren't. Where would an HOA even get this data? I typed again, then didn't send it. The dots would appear when they decided to, not when I needed them. The strip lay tucked under the lawn edge like a snake that had forgotten to breathe. I knelt by the curb and pushed back the St. Augustine with my fingers until the grass split open and the thing showed itself black metal spine studs like dull, oily teeth. Please don't be what you look like, I said to the ground. The ground did not answer. I slid my phone out and set a carpenter's ruler along the strip end aligned to the first bolt. Click. Top down shot. Click. Edge lit with the sun across the studs. The smell down there was metallic like a rainstorm thinking about it. Thunderheads were stacking purple above the streetlights and the cicadas had switched from chant to complaint. Across the puddled shine of my driveway, another glint caught my eye, half hidden where my daughter usually parks when she visits. The grass above that spot looked combed. Intentional. I used the broom handle to tease the blade tips back. Another black ridge showed half an inch proud of the concrete lip. 2, I said mostly to my pulse. Footsteps scuffed behind me. Afternoon. Caleb came the thin, careful voice of Leonard Thompson. The clipboard in his hand was the kind people carry when they want to look busy and not be asked why. Leonard, I said, you lose your pen or just the will to write. He chuckled without humor. Patricia asked me to take a look. Nothing official. You know, friendly eyes. Friendly eyes would have warned me not to drive forward today, I said. I set the ruler more snugly along the first strip so the numbers would be readable in the shot. Smile. I snapped another photo. Leonard's hands trembled even when they found his pockets. You know we can't supervise every square foot of every property. Lucky for both of us, I said, because I'm about to supervise mine. He glanced across the street at a dark SUV parked nose in to the curb. The engine was off. The attention was not. I'll have to check the bylaws, he said. There might be a section about dangerous items. Hazardous items visible from the street, I asked. Yes, he said, relieved. That's a phrase. Would the bylaws mention who made them visible, I asked. He examined the nearest cloud. You know how Patricia is about standards? Do standards include screwing traps into concrete? I asked. His head jerked. What? No, that would be... He couldn't find the polite word for criminal. Installed. I supplied gently, then let the word hang where the wind could look at it. I'll document what I can and let the city explain the rest. Leonard's smile tried to be friendly and landed somewhere closer to apologetic. If there's a misunderstanding, I'm sure we can... mediate. If there's a misunderstanding, I said it's on purpose. I lifted the edge of the lawn higher and took a side-angle shot that showed the stud tips nearly kissing the concrete apron. Tell Patricia I'm happy to schedule a hearing as soon as I finish not driving over these. He swallowed. I'll pass that along. You do that, I said. And while you're at it, pass a magnet along this edge and see what it brings up. I don't carry a magnet, he said. I didn't figure you did, I said, and returned to framing the strip with my ruler. Inside, the kitchen smelled like coffee that had given up. I printed the best shots while the storm argued with itself outside. The jet printer coughed 3 pages onto the table photos still tacky at the edges. I laid them out on a grid, top-down, edge-lit contextual with tire scuffs nearby. I labeled the angles in pencil A, B, C and wrote Incident Log 001 across a manila folder. I could feel my old work muscles tightening dates times what the lens saw, what the lens could be accused of seeing. I stapled the photos to the folder left room for notes and drew a small diagram of the driveway apron with the strips marked in red pen. Rain hit the glass in single syllables. My phone buzzed on the table, walked 3 inches on its case. I flipped it face up. No message yet. The last text in the thread to my son still sat unsent, a draft, edged in doubt. I locked the screen and went back outside with a pair of needle-nose pliers and an evidence bag that was technically a freezer bag with new handwriting. The air smelled like penny and ozone. Thunder walked the horizon. I crouched by the second strip, the one near my daughter's spot, and slid the pliers under the edge. The grass resisted, then let go with a damp sigh. When the strip lifted, the concrete lip flashed its secret 2 fresh screw holes. Dust ring, still pale threads, chewed in a hurry. This wasn't dropped by a careless jogger. This was fastened by someone who had knelt where I was kneeling, someone who had turned their wrist against my day and called it safety. I felt the anger like a match lighting under glass. I let it burn oxygen and not decisions. I took photos of the holes first with the strip still hovering, then with it removed, and my ruler standing in frame like a witness. Click, click. I counted the studs 11, then photographed the count in my notebook so I wouldn't later accuse myself of remembering what I wanted. Need help. A dog walker paused at the end of the sidewalk, the leash slack. The dog interested in anything else. I'm good, I said. Careful where you roll your ankle. He saw the strip, saw the studs, saw the rain, and made a choice not to have time. Stay safe, he said, already moving the phrase a bandage for someone else's cut. I slid the strip into the bag, seal pinched shut with 2 fingers. I lifted the first strip into a second bag, then looked at the driveway as if it could answer the question the dog walker hadn't asked. Why? The SUV across the street had the quiet of something that wanted credit without responsibility. I brought both bags to the porch and set them on the doormat. My hands were steadier than my breath. The front door creaked, the kind of sound old houses make when they're trying to tell you they've heard worse and survived. The printer had cooled. The photos were dry. On the dining table, I laid the bags beside Incident Log 0001. I dated the folder, wrote the hour, and removed 2 spike strips from the driveway apron. Multiple photos captured. Noted fresh screw holes. Weather overcast with incoming thunderstorm. I taped one bag half to the page like we did with small parts in claims work, just enough to keep it from walking. Minicliff or not, there are moments that don't need a drum roll. I looked at the ruler in the photos and remembered my daughter's front tire. It would have met those studs at shin height if she'd turned in fast. I pictured the hiss, the sag, the call from the curb. I thought about who had combed the grass above her spot. I stepped back onto the porch just as the first thick drops hit. The rain didn't so much start as vote. In seconds, it was unanimous. Holding the second bag by its open lips, I worked the strip into it with 2 fingers like I was handling a live thing. A gust blew the storm sideways. The porch light made a wet halo out of the air. My phone buzzed again. I slid the door with my elbow and stepped inside, rain chasing my heels. On the screen, a new email had arrived. From HOA, President, subject friendly. Caution, body. Caleb, please refrain from storing hazardous items visible from the street. I read it once. I read it again. The strip in my hand clinked against its own teeth like a laugh I didn't enjoy hearing. I set the bag on the table next to the photos and told the room, noted. Then I raised the phone and took a final picture email open strip-bagged ruler visible the storm painting. Everything, a soft, expensive gray. I was halfway up the ladder when Judy's voice clicked on behind me, paced like a metronome by the tap of her notebook. This reads like a training case, she said. Camera here is good. Tilt 5 degrees, you'll catch the gate hinge. You do this for a living now? I asked, easing the bracket a notch. The porch bulb hummed. Moths thudded themselves silly against it. I taught 7th graders to spot plagiarism, she said. Pattern recognition is a transferable skill. I climbed down. I'm building a case file. Timestamps, chain of custody. Boring and thorough. Boring wins, she said, flipping a page. Also, you have 3 neighbors who suddenly started writing like twins. She showed me a printout, template sentences underlined twice. Lines circled in green, community safety protocols. Immediate resolution preferred? Uniform aesthetic. Same commas, she said. Same misused hyphens. Whoever wrote one wrote them all. Patricia, I said. Or her ghostwriter Judy replied. Either way, your binder deserves a new section. Scripts. The lawn smelled clean and damp. A sprinkler down the street had miscalculated the wind. I knelt on the deck and spread out a sheet of graph paper. Camera placement map, I wrote at the top. Back gate, side yard driveway approach. Draw your cones, Judy said, tapping the corners. Label them like you're explaining to a substitute teacher. I sketched triangles in pencil, their points on screws and hinges, their bases fanning toward the driveway. If they use the apron as their path, this cone picks the face. Initial the edges, Judy said. Then sign and date. I raised an eyebrow. Hall, monitor vibes. She grinned and initialed the bottom right JM. You'll want a second set of eyes in court, and I like being official. Headlights washed across the fence slats and slid away. My son, Marcus, came through the side gate in a hoodie and jeans, the hoodie casual, the posture not. I brought spare cards, he said, holding up a small plastic case. And Dad, you're getting better at this. At what exactly, I asked. Letting the gear be patient so you don't have to, he said. He nodded to Judy. Hi, Ms. Miller. Hi, Marcus, she said. Your father just discovered clip art for justice. Graph paper, I corrected. Vintage. Marcus laughed under his breath and set a small manila envelope on the table. With a Sharpie, he wrote in block letters, Chain External Media. He slid a fresh thumb drive inside and sealed it with a piece of blue painter's tape. Rule 1, he said. Media lives like it's already evidence. Say the part about hands, Judy prompted. Marcus smiled. Every time media changes hands, we write it down. Who, when, where, and we don't pass it around like cookies. Your when is now, I said. Your who is you. He wrote Ems Rourke 1903 HR's backdeck along the tape and pushed the envelope to me. Your turn. I added C. Rourke 1904 HR's received. The Sharpie squeaked. Feels ceremonial. It is Marcus said. Ceremony makes memory behave. The new camera chimed a tiny, confident beep when I clipped in the card. I angled the lens toward the gate latch. The red LED winked once, then held steady. In the yard, a moth circled the camera like it had found a moon it could actually touch. So, Judy set our narrative spine. We have a notice with post-divorce permit codes. We have 2 spike strips professionally placed. We have a neighbor with a clipboard and a vocabulary he borrowed from Patricia. We have a map with cones and initials. Next, we need behavior, meaning I asked. Someone doing something they shouldn't in a way they think won't be seen, she said. Preferably with a time we can triangulate to other records. Dispatch logs, for instance, Marcus said. If certain people like to call non-emergency lines to report things, timestamps become illustrative. You're both unnerving, I said. Teacher and cop, Judy said. The party games are terrible. We waited. The backyard breathed in crickets. The fence ticked in the night cool. On the other side of the slats, the cul-de-sac sounded like itself a garage, shutting the click of a patio door someone testing a grill igniter too many times. I thought of my daughter's car and the halfway puncture it had been spared. I thought of the phrase uniform aesthetic and the uniform way it had been used. The moths did another lap round the bulb. My skin held summer like a charge. "Tell me again why the driveway matters," Judy said, teacher voice warm. "It's the front stage," I said. "Everyone passes it. It's the path they need me to fear. It's also where the camera can see the most sky, which makes faces brighter." "Good," she said. "Put that sentence in your binder later. Juries like sentences about light." The camera ticked a sound like the tiniest clock. "We should do a test run," Marcus said. "Walk the route. See if it picks up the gate the way you think." "You volunteering?" I asked. He pointed at his hoodie. "Off duty tonight. I can walk. You can watch. We did both." He stepped through the yard like he lived there, which he once did, and tugged the gate once for noise. The porch light threw his shadow long. I watched the tiny screen on my phone as the camera mirrored a grainy Marcus crossing into the cone. "Perfect," I said. "You look guilty." "Thanks, Dad," he said. Every guy's dream compliment. Judy wrote test pass 1916 HRs on the margin of my map and initialed again. Now we wait for the uninvited rehearsal. It didn't take long. 10 minutes of nothing, then a rhythm that wasn't ours, tap, pause, like tentative steps. A figure emerged at the edge of the cone half hidden by the fence line. The sight line was clever angled to use the privacy hedge 2 houses over, but the camera had the patience of a metronome. "Capture." "Rolling," I whispered, as if whispers could help pixels. The person matched pace with an elderly woman on the sidewalk, Mrs. Gaines. I recognized the knit of her cardigan keeping just enough distance to shadow her, just enough to look like coincidence. When she turned the corner, the shadow peeled off, took 3 quick steps toward my side yard, and crouched by the gate. Judy's pencil stopped. "Hands," Marcus said quietly. On the screen, a gloved hand reached up toward the metal breaker box mounted by the gatepost. The cover lifted a careful inch. The gloved fingers probed, then pinched a switch half down, half up like a child testing a boundary. The porch light flickered a quick heartbeat, then steadied. The recording time counter walked on 00107000108. "Got you," I said, my mouth a dry whisper. The gloved hand slid the cover closed. The figure pivoted back to the hedge-matched step with the descending night and rejoined the sidewalk 2 houses down like a puzzle piece obeying the picture on the box. That, Judy said, underlining pattern on her printout so hard, the paper embossed, is exactly what this is. Marcus exhaled. "Dad, keep doing exactly this." I nodded. The camera's LED blinked twice, recording a tiny red lighthouse in a backyard we had just mapped into radii and reasons. The moth found it and tapped it again, attracted to the smallest truth in the dark. The community center smelled like burned coffee and floor polish. Someone had printed "hearing" in a font that tried too hard and taped it crooked to a foam board. Folding chairs marched in rows toward a plastic lectern. A children's mural of sunshine and stick-figure birds smiled behind the rules sign. On my way in, locking the truck, I'd felt my shoe catch a tacky line at the edge of the driveway apron, a thin strip of adhesive like a fake seal, fresh, clear, and proprietary in tone. I'd photographed it with my keys still in my mouth. Now the image lay printed in my binder sleeve gloss, reflecting the fluorescent hum. I straightened my shirt and squared the binder to the table edge. Judy slid into the second row with a pen, giving me the kind of nod teachers say for tests you can pass if you breathe. Patricia took the chair behind the lectern and set down a stack of papers that looked more legal than they were. Leonard stood to her right, script clutched like a hymn he'd learned in the parking lot. "Call to order," Patricia said, lips rounding on the word order. "This is an informal opportunity for voluntary compliance. Informal hearings," I said. "That a new kind?" "Community discussion," she replied. "Less adversarial. Less due process," I said, and kept my voice level. A board member passed out agendas. Mine had a faint thumbprint in the corner where the ink had smeared Item 3 Enforcement Overview, Item 4 Mortgage Notification Procedures. The thermostat clicked. The room responded like a fish tank. Leonard lifted his script. "Property maintenance violations requiring immediate remediation with escalating penalties for non-compliance leading to potential mortgage notification procedures," he read in a single breath. His voice thinned on notification. I opened my binder and placed a certified copy of the county-filed bylaws to the left of Patricia's current version. Their weights announced themselves differently. Let's start with pagination, I said. Your version has a section 12.4b with mortgage notification. The recorded bylaws, I tapped the embossed seal stop at section 10. Patricia smiled without smiling. There have been updates, filed where I asked, because the county recorder doesn't have them. We distributed an email, she said. Emails don't amend covenants, I said. Judy's pen caught the light, paused, moved again. Leonard flipped a page. Homeowner is required to maintain uniform aesthetic and verify fen. He stalled on the word. Fenestration against current city codes. City code changed after installation, I said, sliding a finger to the relevant line in my copy. And your own filed document filing number to 2014 to 07891 limits enforcement to maintenance within original scope. I read the sentence aloud, once each word deliberate. Quote, the association shall have no authority to compel retrofit to codes adopted subsequent to permitted installation. For a heartbeat, the fluorescent ballast hummed alone. Someone shifted in a folding chair. Metal answered metal. Patricia stacked her papers. We are concerned about community safety. And yet, I said, sliding a photo across the table, someone placed a seal or something like one on my driveway apron this afternoon. Do the bylaws authorize adhesives on private property? She glanced at the photo. We wouldn't place anything. Then who would I ask? That's not the purpose of tonight, she said. We are here to address your non-compliance. By citing sections that don't exist in the recorded bylaws, I said, keeping the tone of a man reading ingredients off a cereal box. Judy coughed softly, the pedagogical kind. Pagination mismatch is notable, she said to no one in particular. Leonard's script shook. He tried again. Immediate remediation to preserve property value and community harmony. Harmony isn't a legal standard, I said. Patricia placed 2 fingers on her stack to steady the performance. Mr. Rourke, you're escalating a simple matter. I'm correcting it, I said. The children's mural behind her showed a sun drawn by a child with no understanding of melanoma. It smiled anyway. The coffee tasted like it had been reheated 3 times and forgiven twice. I breathed through my nose and kept the lid on my voice. Let's compare dates, I said, flipping to a tab. Your current version shows an effective date last month. The county file date I tapped the stamp again is 5 years ago. No intervening amendments appear in the index. We're in the process of recording, Patricia said. Recording amends, nothing retroactively, I said. And even then, you don't get mortgage notification authority by wishing for it. Mortgage lenders appreciate community input, she said. They appreciate law, I said. Not input. The thermostat clicked again. The room cooled a degree. A man in the back cleared his throat like he'd been appointed to it. Leonard licked his lips and read his next line. Non-compliance may result in liens per section. Stop there, I said. Your Section 14 references a lien process. The recorded bylaws have a Section 9 for enforcement, which requires a noticed hearing with quorum and minutes. Did we send a noticed hearing? This is a hearing, Patricia said, gesturing to the chairs as if chairs were evidence. Where's the notice, I asked. Emailed, she said again. Where's the quorum, I asked. We have a board majority present, she said. Where are the minutes, I asked. She held up a pen. The room stills not only with silence, it stills with recognition. You could feel people counting backwards from 10. I laid my palm on the certified copy like a pledge and quoted filing no, 2014, 07891. Again, quietly enough to keep the room from deciding I was angry and loud enough for the recorder in my pocket to decide I was clear. The association shall conduct any enforcement hearing in accordance with the recorded bylaws and state law. Mortgage notification is not an enforcement remedy in these documents. The mural's sunshine felt like a smirk. Patricia restacked her stack. We will escalate appropriately. I slid the photo of the fake seal across the table until it touched her papers. Start by telling me who authorized placing anything on my property apron. That's a city matter, she said. The city doesn't use packing tape, I said. Her eyes held, then skated off to Leonard, who found the floor fascinating. Behind Patricia, a board member leaned to another and whispered. The whisper scribbled. The scribble looked a lot like my truck's plate number. I closed the binder. The clasp snapped a polite gavel. The fluorescent lights hummed their vote. I kept my voice level and my back straight because that's what a man does when he is being called unreasonable by ink that isn't filed where ink belongs. Mr. Rourke, Patricia said with the cadence of victory not yet achieved, thank you for attending. We will be in touch. Escalate appropriately, I said, letting the phrase return to its owner like a library book. She smiled without smiling. Behind her, the board member wrote down the last letter of my plate. The envelope was thick enough to feel like a verdict. Urgent screamed in a red bar where normal mail says hello. I turned it over twice with my thumb on the seam as if thumbprints could soften what was inside, then opened it with the patience you use to avoid tearing the return address. Loan review. Action required the header announced polite font doing cruel work. It cited community violations and uniform aesthetic compliance like they were conditions I'd agreed to in my sleep. My name was spelled right. That felt like a new indignity. I put the letter flat on the kitchen table between the calculator and the bowl full of keys and clipped coupons. The radiator clanked the way old bones do when the weather decides to change without asking anyone. Rain drew hesitations down the patio door, each line bent slightly at the mid-frame like a thought reconsidered. "Okay," I said to the table. "We're going to read this." The opening paragraph promised collaboration. The second paragraph used threatening as a verb without meaning to failure to engage may result in loan review. The third had the phrase lean priority spelled lean, like someone who had never spelled it in a fight. Leaning priority? I muttered, and my glasses slid down my nose in solidarity. I pushed them back up and kept reading 30 days property value, community safety, immediate resolution preferred. The phrases had mileage on them from being used other places and never cleaned. There was a signature block with a name that sounded both human and automated. No direct line. The rain thickened until the backyard blurred. The radiator found a new rhythm, 2 clicks and a thunk. I flattened the letter one more time with the heel of my hand and felt the tired in my bones. Not anger, not yet. Just the math of a month in red. The phone vibrated. A single word from Marcus' home kitchen I texted back. Bring your best calm voice. He arrived 20 minutes later, hoodie, damp at the shoulders, badge tucked away where it belonged for family hours. He read the letter silently once, then again with the pen in his hand, underlining things he didn't like. "Start here," he said, tapping the second paragraph. "They can request a review, but this phrasing is bluff." Also, he pointed at lean priority. "It's lean. That's the kind of typo lawyers don't make. So they're not lawyers," I said. "Or they're sloppy," he said. "Either way, it won't hold as written. Keep breathing." "That's the goal," I said. The calculator clacked 12 characters worth of reassurance and failed to supply any. He flipped the letter over, scanning the back like it might confess. No department stamp, no case number, no reference to the deed of trust section that would actually apply. "Dad, this is pressure, not law." "Pressure still squeezes," I said. I know he said softer, but you're not alone in the vice. We were still at the table when Leonard knocked on the storm door like a man who'd already decided to regret it. Rain beaded on his jacket. His clipboard was wet enough to curl at the corners. He stepped into the kitchen with the hesitance of someone who wasn't sure he was invited or expected. "Caleb," he said, voice chasing breath. "Do you have a minute?" "About 30 days, I said, tapping the letter. His eyes found the red header and flinched. I heard. I didn't hear. But I figured. Make a choice," Marcus said gently. "Hearing or figuring?" Leonard rubbed his palms together, damp skin squeaking. "Patricia's planning something bigger," he said, the words barely coherent from being pushed through a narrow throat. "She keeps saying we need a final enforcement action before certain dates." He swallowed. "She promised me a stipend if I kept reading scripts. Said there'd be a property management role after with real pay. How big is the stipend, I asked. Not big enough to buy a clean conscience, he said, and his laugh broke itself. But when you haven't worked in a while, small numbers look like a lot. Actors, he added suddenly like a secret had just tripped over its shoelaces. She said she knows actors who can do uniforms. For presence, for pressure. Marcus's mouth turned into a line. Actors in uniforms. Leonard nodded. Costume rental. She said that phrase like it was funny. Nothing funny about fraud. Marcus said, not smiling. He looked at me. Dad. "I'm thinking," I said. Thinking sounded braver than worrying. Leonard wrung his hands again, and a bead of rain fell to the tile like punctuation. "I'm sorry. I should have said something sooner. I didn't know how to untie myself. Consider yourself untying," I said. "But you need to write what you just said. Time, place, who said what. We'll make it official later. Right now, we make it accurate." He nodded. "I can do that. Also," Marcus said, tapping the letter, "stop carrying Patricia's scripts like they're your breath. They're not. If she asks you to read anything further stall, tell her you need to check the bylaws. She likes that phrase. Use it. Leonard exhaled. I do like that phrase, he said, then winced at himself. I'll try. He backed toward the door, guilt ushering him. I'm sorry, he said again. Get dry, I said. Then right. When he'd gone, the kitchen felt like it had been vacated twice. The radiator clanked once in sympathy. Marcus set the mortgage letter down on the table like a card he didn't want to play but couldn't ignore. Okay, he said. Here's the plan. We document. We keep baiting with truth. We let her think the bluff is working. And when she steps over the line, we don't have to push her, we just have to be standing there with the camera on. Then we build the record and wait for her to overplay, I said. The words surprised me with how much they sounded like a decision. He nodded. That. I picked up the calculator and set it back down. The kitchen light made a brass circle on its buttons. I smoothed the letter, slid it into a clear sleeve in the binder under a new tab I labeled Lender. The Sharpie bled slightly in the plastic. It still read like a promise. Marcus, I said if she brings uniforms to my door, I don't open. He shook his head. If someone claims authority, I open. In uniform. On duty. Calm as a lake. You can't be everywhere, I said. I can be here enough, he said. And cameras don't sleep. We moved through the rest of the hour quietly like people who both know how to count. I made coffee I didn't need. He checked batteries I'd already charged. Rain turned the backyard into a watercolor and the clock into a suggestion. The phone buzzed on the table, surfed an inch on its case, and came to rest against the mortgage letter like it had an opinion. I thumbed the screen. The subject line wore a smile it hadn't earned from HOA President Subject Enforcement Action Schedule, confirmed body per covenants and community standards. An enforcement action is scheduled at dawn 2 weeks from today. Please ensure access and availability for inspection. I read it aloud. Marcus looked at the timestamp, then out the door at the rain, then back at me. 2 words, low and steady. We're ready. I didn't feel ready. But I felt something I preferred to panic, a plan like a ladder, you can't fall up. I added the email to the binder HOA tab behind the mortgage letter and drew a small clock beside the printed time, the hands pointing at dawn in the only way a drawing can with certainty that reality will have to borrow. The pounding rattled the front door at exactly 600 a.m. Police open immediately for community violation enforcement. The voice was stiff, rehearsed. Too many syllables jammed into authority. I held the camera chest high. Its red light blinked like a patient heart. Marcus was already in uniform, badge-pinned posture calm. He glanced once at the light and nodded, recording. My pulse obeyed. Through the peephole, I saw 2 figures in uniforms that were just slightly wrong. The fabric was stiff, the patches a little too glossy, the paperwork in one man's hand bending like it had been printed yesterday. Behind them, Patricia's SUV idled at the curb, her sunglasses aimed at my porch like she was already writing the story. I opened the door 6 inches enough for the chain to hum. Morning, I said. Open fully, the taller one barked, holding up a document. You are in violation of community covenants. Marcus stepped forward, shoulders square. Gentlemen, case number... The shorter one read off numbers too quickly, stumbling between digits. Marcus held out a hand. Let me see the warrant. They hesitated, then shoved the paper toward him. The seal was grainy as if Xeroxed from a textbook. The header spelled County Sheriff's Office with 2 R's. My camera caught every pixel. Marcus read aloud in a steady cadence, his voice carrying to the sidewalk. Document purports to be a warrant. Seal mismatched. Case number invalid. Spelling errors noted. He looked up calm. This is fraudulent. One imposter shifted his weight. The other glanced at Patricia's SUV. The curtains across the street fluttered. Neighbors had heard the pounding. Judy's pen was already moving in the second row of parked cars. Community violation enforcement. The tall one. Repeated volume. Rising. That phrase doesn't exist in Texas. Law, Marcus said. He pulled his radio from his belt. Dispatch, this is Deputy Rourke. I have 2 subjects at address impersonating officers attempting entry on a fake warrant, requesting units. Static, then a reply. Clear. Official. The imposters stiffened at the word impersonating. I lifted the camera a little higher. The red light blinked patient, undeniable. Smile for the record, I said. Marcus's voice stayed formal. You are under arrest for impersonating a peace officer and presenting fraudulent documents. Place your hands behind your backs. Wait, the shorter one said, eyes wide. We were just... Marcus repeated the command tone unbent. His cuffs clicked. The sound echoed off the driveway louder than it had any right to be. Neighbors pressed closer, murmuring. Phones lifted. Patricia's SUV door opened, then slammed hard enough to make the mirrors shiver. She had seen the cuffs, heard the word fraudulent, and realized the trap had sprung. Her sunglasses hid her eyes, but not her flinch. I held the camera steady on the driveway as the imposters froze, their borrowed authority dissolving into nylon and shame. Judy scribbled fast, her notebook angled like a stenographer's Bible. The neighborhood breathed in as one. By 9 on a Saturday, the cul-de-sac was shiny with good intentions. Neighbors drifted toward my driveway carrying gloves, and bags of concrete mixed the awkward silence, heavy as the sacks on their shoulders. Someone had brought a wheelbarrow that squeaked like it needed an apology. The morning sun warmed the backs of our necks. From 2 houses over a grill sent up a ribbon of sweet smoke that smelled like a promise if you were generous. "Where do you want us?" Frank asked, voice tentative. He still wouldn't quite meet my eyes. "Forms, first," I said, pointing to the wood frames I'd built along the damaged apron. "We'll set the rebar, then mix. Small batches. We're not pouring a stadium." Judy arrived with her clipboard and a canvas tote, hair clipped back, sleeves already rolled. "Good morning," she said to the group teacher, voice tuned to welcoming, not scolding. She looked at me and tilted her head toward the forms. "You did the math." "I did the math," I said. "Now I'd like to forget it and just spread." She opened the tote and produced a slim packet clipped together, the first page titled in her tidy hand, Draft Bylaws, Governance and Hearings Proposed. Certain lines were highlighted in lemon yellow: notice requirements, quorum rules, independent counsel. She handed stacks out like programs at a recital. "This is not a lecture," she said, smiling at the nervousness on faces. "It's scaffolding. We'll ask an attorney to clean the language later. For now, I want us to remember what a meeting is and what it isn't." A murmur moved through the group, an exhale more than a sound. People took the pages with both hands, the way you hold something breakable. Leonard stood at the edge of the circle, hands deep in his pockets, eyes on the gravel. He looked like a man trying to decide if shame was heavier picked up or put down. When he stepped forward, the wheelbarrow squeaked as if giving him a cue. "I need to say it," he began, voice thin, but not hiding. "Patricia promised me money to read. I said yes when I should have said no. I was unemployed and scared. That's not an excuse. I'll testify to everything I saw." He swallowed and looked at me. "If you'll have me, I'd like to help fix what I helped break." I nodded. "Grab the rebar," I said, and his relief was sudden enough to be audible. We worked without hurry. The rhythm of shovels into the mixer, the thunk of sacks against wheelbarrow, the hiss of water meeting dust. Somebody turned up a radio low enough not to argue with the morning. The grill smoke drifted closer and then away. A dog somewhere objected to a squirrel's career goals. At the sawhorses, Judy guided a pair of teenagers with a carpenter's pencil and that patient nod people remember from reading circles. "Mark your inch," she said. 2 inches from the edge, stagger your ties. No one needs to be perfect, just be consistent. "Consistency is perfect," I said, setting a tie with pliers, and she clicked her tongue once in approval. We set the rebar like ribs, tamped the base until the gravel whispered that it had settled. The forms were square, the lines true. Sweat made a bright outline on the back of Leonard's shirt. He didn't notice. Frank measured twice, even when I told him once would do. A neighbor I barely knew labored with the concentration of someone making up for not seeing something sooner. "Quorum," Judy said, holding up a highlighted paragraph as if it were a recipe. "If we had required a quorum at the right moments, some of this doesn't happen. Notice delivered, not suggested. Minutes written, not implied." "Minutes written," Frank echoed, as if the phrase could erase other words he'd said in the past year. "Write it," Judy said gently, and handed him a pen. Marcus stopped by in jeans and a t-shirt, a bag of ice looped over one forearm, the kind of off-duty you don't point at. He scanned the forms, once checked the level with his eye, then the actual level, and placed the ice in the cooler as if it too had paperwork. "You look like a crew," he said. "A good one." "Crew of the previously mistaken," Leonard said. "Crew of the currently helpful," Marcus replied. "Let that be the headline. We mixed in short runs, the slurry turning from gray powder to river rock to something that remembered being stone." I guided the first pour into the form and watched it level itself with a little encouragement and a lot of patience. The sound of it was soft, like a secret agreeing to tell the truth. "Float," I said, handing Frank the magnesium float. He began smoothing the surface with too much enthusiasm, and I touched his elbow. "Let it set its own pace. We don't push the skin before it's ready." "Copy that," he said with a seriousness that made me like him again. Judy moved among us, not commanding, just noticing. Put your names on the draft when you've read the quorum section, she told people, mid-mix. We're not passing a law today. We're passing the habit of not pretending. Someone's kid wandered near the wet-edge sneakers printing little tragedies. Stop, please, his mother said, but the boy had already placed a hand in the new surface and giggled at the perfect palm he left behind. There was a beat where we all startled years of rules training us to gasp at the wrong thing. Then the mother put her own hand beside his, a smaller adult print next to a smaller child's. Laughter broke across the group, thin at first, then real. We'll trowel it out on the next section, I said, smiling, and on this one we'll call it character. Character, Judy repeated, making a note. An underused word in bylaws. During the second pour, Leonard worked the chute with an attention that bordered on prayer. When the surface had taken, and it was time to edge, he set the tool down and cleared his throat. For the record, he said to the open air, I was coerced. But I still chose to comply. I'm going to make that right. He looked to me for a verdict and got none, and maybe that was what he wanted. Hold the edger at a tilt, I said instead. Let the tool do the work. He did, and the line came out clean. At the folding table by the curb, Judy had taped the draft bylaws open to the quorum page. People stopped, wiped their hands, and signed the margin initials like yeses. She had drawn a simple timeline with a Sharpie notices. Quorum, hearing, minutes, council review. Next to hearing, she'd written no adhesives on private property and underlined it twice. The barbecue smell swung back again on a change of breeze. The neighbor at the grill lifted the lid and called out burgers in 10. The phrase took a seat at our circle and made itself at home. When the last section was floated and the edges told us they wanted alone time, I ran my hand gently over the smooth, damp concrete. The surface was cool, and even an intention made visible. I could feel yesterday's tacky tape under my palm in memory, and today's correction under my hand in fact. Prop restored halfway. Judy said, as if noting where we were in a book. She made another note on the timeline, then took out her phone and opened a calendar. Ceremony, she said, circling a date with her thumb next month. Public. We plant this in the community garden of our memory, and we water it. What kind of ceremony, Frank asked. The kind with minutes and microphones, she said, and a statement that we know what authority is and isn't. You want me to speak? I asked. I want you to stand there, she said. Speaking will happen to you. People began drifting off in pairs, promising to come back with coolers and foil pans. The sound of the grill lid closing punctuated the morning like a period you could eat. Leonard stayed behind and cleaned the tools without being asked. He returned the edger to the bucket with a clink that sounded like something falling into place. Thank you, he said to me, voice small but stable. See you at the ceremony, I said. He nodded. I'll be there. Under oath if they let me. Under oath, Judy echoed and wrote the phrase on her clipboard next to witness list. We stood a moment longer, the three of us looking at the driveway as if a road could be a chapter heading. The concrete shone a little in the sun and then dulled as it agreed to belong to the world. Somewhere behind us, the grill hissed at a new batch of burgers. Somewhere ahead of us, a microphone waited to click on. Next month, Judy said, tapping the circle on her phone. Public. The folding table wobbled once on my driveway before finding its footing. A plain white cloth lay across its corners weighted by clipboards and pens. On top, a thick set of settlement papers waited under a ribboned county seal. The blue sky was exact in its optimism. Porch flags along the street snapped in a breeze that carried the scent of barbecue smoke and spice. This time, not as apology, but as celebration. Neighbors gathered in a loose circle, fanning themselves with agendas Judy had printed in 12-point font. Their chatter had less static than it used to, no whispered caution, just the light noise of people who'd come to see a thing finish. Judy stood near the front row pen, uncapped, smile-ready, like punctuation. Marcus was off duty, but wore his uniform anyway, crisp and neat badge, a quiet anchor. He'd insisted saying formality deserves form. He lingered by the edge of the table, hands folded, eyes scanning like he didn't know how not to. Judge Harrison cleared his throat, and the circle leaned in. He was a county man, graying at the temple's voice tempered from years of probate and traffic hearings. We are here today, he began to witness the conclusion of a matter that has burdened this community. His words carried without a microphone, not booming, but steady enough for the back row. From the street came the flash pop of cameras. Patricia was being walked past, wrists joined by steel hair uncombed, mutters pitched higher than conviction but lower than dignity. This isn't over, she barked yet. Every shudder drowned her syllables. No one in the circle flinched. Children clutched parents' legs and then looked away, bored of villains. The judge tapped the settlement papers once with his finger. This document affirms Mr. Rourke's property rights without condition. He raised his voice deliberate so that the words were captured on recorders and retold by the air itself. The association recognizes limits on its authority as defined by recorded law. No more, no less. Applause cracked the morning open. I felt the binder at my side closed for the first time in 7 years. My thumb rubbed its spine like you might rub a scar you no longer hate. Judy leaned toward me. Want to sign first? I shook my head. Community first. She turned to the neighbors holding up the stack of draft bylaws we'd sanded into shape. These are not perfect, she said, but they are stronger than silence. She read each clause aloud. Notice requirements, quorum rules, independent review. And after each one, voices in the circle said, aye. Some laughed at themselves for being formal, some clapped too soon, but each sound landed like a nail holding wood together. Leonard raised his hand, voice thin, but sure. For the record, I add my testimony to these rules. Never again. The judge nodded. So noted. Marcus caught my eye. You breathing. For the first time in years, I said. The barbecue smoke drifted closer, applause followed each clause, and for once the driveway didn't feel like a stage for humiliation. It felt like the center of something repaired. Judge Harrison lifted the seal, pressed it onto the settlement, and handed me the pen. The nib scratched across my name. Neighbors signed after me, initials piling like bricks. Judy gathered the pages with care, smoothing them as if they were linens. Patricia's SUV was already gone. What remained was the sound of kids chalking flowers onto the fresh concrete pink and yellow petals scattered in crooked perspective. Their laughter painted more than the chalk. I sat down on the low step, let the binder rest closed at my feet, and pulled in a breath that felt earned. The sky above was ordinary blue, which was the best kind. The flags snapped softly in the breeze as sunlight pooled across my fully restored driveway where the ceremony had ended, but the voices lingered. I could still smell barbecue drifting down the street, proof that neighbors now gathered with open doors instead of closed curtains. What mattered wasn't Patricia's downfall, but the reforms signed and the quiet resolve that abuse wouldn't repeat here. We rebuilt more than concrete, we redrew the lines of dignity. Justice isn't loud, it's steady.